It should be really fun and easy today. We're making sausage rolls, which is a very traditional dish in both Australia and New Zealand. It has obviously become a British staple as well, and I honestly don't know if it started in England and moved to Australia or vice versa, but it is sort of the food, one of the staple foods of Australia and New Zealand. I spent some time in New Zealand, and you couldn't go into a single shop without there being sausage rolls to have, and they are delicious. You can make them with pork, which I am using today. You can make them with ground chicken, turkey, or even beef if you want to. Just try to find one that is not the leanest of the meats. If it's the super, super lean, low-fat turkey, then it's not going to bind as well, and it's going to get a little bit dried out. But you can always adjust for that if you're concerned about fat content. You can definitely get a lean meat and then maybe add in one extra egg or sort of change things around. But and that was a great question emailed in. You can definitely substitute other kinds of ground meats if you don't eat pork. Pork is the traditional part of this recipe in those places, so I'm going with that, but I know it's not part of everybody's lifestyle, and that's okay. Chicken, turkey, ground beef, a mixture of any of those, just anything that has a little bit of a fat content will help it bind and help it not dry out in the oven. So pretty straightforward ingredient lists that we're working with. You always want to make sure you go through your recipe really carefully when you're cooking from a recipe. Now, of course, once you get into the cooking process, you can tweak things a little bit when you're cooking. That's the fun. Learning if you like things extra spicy, or learning if you like things with a whole lot of black pepper. You know, there's variances that you can make for your own personal preferences. It's not like baking where you really kind of want to follow all the rules to a T. These are sort of more like guidelines, sort of recommendations on how things should taste. I really love thyme. Fresh thyme is my favorite flavor. It's my favorite of all of the savory herbs and spices. So I'm putting in a little bit more than the recipe calls for because I like things to taste extra thymy. You can change things up a little bit. If you have questions on how to do that, just type it into the text or let me know. So we're going with pork, or like I said, any other kind of ground meat. Puff pastry, which you can find in your freezer section. Usually it comes in a rectangle in a long box that's like the Pepperidge Farms brand or a couple of the other mainstream brands. I get mine in little squares. It comes like this. It's just how I could find it at the supermarket near me. And so it doesn't matter. It does not matter what shape or size it comes in. I'm going to show you how I can still roll this out into a general rectangle shape and roll it up and get awesome sausage rolls. It just means that I'm going to have to be making more squares than if I had a larger rectangle, but it doesn't matter. Just kind of whatever you can find. There sometimes is accessible whole wheat puff pastry, which would be a really great option. You can make these with whole wheat, then you're adding in extra whole grains into your diet, which is always better for us than not. So puff pastry ready to go. If you don't have yours thawed and you want to make them now, please pull it out immediately. Set out your one sheet somewhere to thaw out, like as warm as you can, maybe somewhere near the oven. We should be preheating the oven to 425. Pretty hot oven here today, so want to make sure that parents and older helpers are in the room if we need to put things in and out of the oven later. And then we're going to be mixing our sausage mixture, which is the sausage panko, which is a Japanese-style white breadcrumb. They have a lot less preservatives and added sodium and things like that than some other kinds of breadcrumbs you can find on the market. They're just really plain, nice, crispy texture. They add a lot of good binding, which is why we're going to use it in the middle. We're going to be doing chopped parsley. I have fresh. Pick thyme, again, I have fresh. If you have dried of either of those, totally fine. You would just reduce the quantity a little bit because dried is usually stronger in flavor than fresh because it's been kind of condensed in its potency. And I can walk you through how to minimize those as we start mixing. We're going to be using garlic powder and onion powder. You want to make sure those are both powder, not salt. People can make that confusion. If you're adding garlic salt and onion salt, you're going to have super, super salty sausage. We don't need to do that. We're going to be adding a teeny bit of salt, but we don't want to add a lot. We're going to be getting most of our flavor from all these other spices and herbs. After the onion powder, garlic powder, we have our salt and pepper. You can put in as much pepper as you want. That is a very personal thing. And then our egg This is the one tricky thing about this recipe, guys. We have to use one egg, but we're splitting it in half. How do you do that? So you have to crack the egg into a little dish or a bowl or a cup or whatever you want to use, and then beat it up. So make sure that it's whisked really, really well, broken down completely. You have a nice scrambled egg ready to go. And then what we're going to do is use half of it for our sausage mixture and the other half later on to egg wash the puff pastry, which will help make it nice and golden brown. You can always double this recipe and then freeze the sausage rolls. And so in that case, you would be using 1 whole egg for the mixture and 1 whole egg for the egg wash. That's kind of the only tricky thing about this recipe, but as long as you can do that, crack 1 egg into a bowl, whisk it really, really well with a whisk or a fork, and then we're just going to be splitting that in half, kind of eyeballing, loosey-goosey. You can measure it if you want, but I think we're all going to get pretty much half and half. That's what we're going for. So my oven is ready, my sheet pan is ready with a little bit of the silicone mat. If you have parchment paper, that would be great. You don't want to use foil because that's going to conduct the heat and make your sheet pan hotter than it normally would be. And then you're going to get a little extra crispy puff pastry on the bottom, and that's not what we're going for. So paper or silicone, and then if you don't have either of those, just use a little bit of pan spray on a regular baking sheet and you're good to go. So we're going to get most of our ingredients ready here. I just kind of want to set a couple things aside, get our oven space clear. Got my puff ready, my flour, which we're going to need to roll this out, and a rolling pin. If you don't have a rolling pin, a wine bottle or like an even can or anything that is, or a glass that isn't too tapered, something that you're going to get a nice even roll. We're not rolling it perfectly. We're just trying to thin it out a little bit. Otherwise, it's too much puff pastry. So first, we're going to mix our sausage mixture. Usually I don't get this kind of sausage, it's just regular pork sausage. And this is 1 pound, usually in a tube, so I'm just going to be using half of that. We want half a pound of loose sausage. If you get sausages that come in links, you can always just take it out of the casing and like squeeze it out like a toothpaste tube, and then you'd have pork sausage. You could do that with any kind of sausage actually, as long as it's not fully cooked. You can get chicken sausage that way and then take the casing off and just squeeze it out. So I'm using half of this tube. I'm just going to squeeze this into my mixing bowl where I already have my 1/4 cup of panko breadcrumbs. Okay, that is half a pound. Set this aside. I'm going to just be using my hands to mix this, so I'm not trying to touch a lot of things in between this process because now I have raw pork sausage on my hand, and you definitely don't want to get that anywhere else. You don't want to go touching all the stuff in your kitchen because then you're going to have raw meat all over the place, and that's really unsafe. So if you're using your hands, great. I think they're the best tool that you have. If you want, you can use a spatula or a heavy wooden spoon, or you can put gloves on, but I like to do this to really get a well-mixed mixture. Got that. I'm going to chop my parsley. My parsley is on its last legs. It's kind of starting to dry out in the fridge, but that's okay. Just going to get chopped up and added in. Stems are perfectly edible with parsley. They're soft stems, so you can chop up the stems. See how I have a little bit of stem in this bunch? That's okay, because we're going to chop it so fine that it doesn't matter, and those stems have tons of really, really good, strong, delicious parsley flavor. So as I'm cutting this, the 2 most important things that I can tell you about knife safety, well, let's go with 3. Hold the knife in the handle close to the blade so you have a good, strong, sturdy grip on it. Keep the tip of the knife on the cutting board and rock the knife back and forth rather than chopping up and down. That's not good for your fingers or the knife. And this is your guide hand. You want to try to always know where your knuckles are. If you keep your first knuckle bent back, you're not going to chop the tip of your fingers off. You see how I can keep my fingers back, but I'm also holding the parsley down, keeps it nice and steady, but keeps my hand safe. Once I've got it in a nice pile, I can just use my guide hand to keep my knife securely on the board, and then I'm just chopping. A downward motion very, very quickly. It helps if you have sharp knives. So if your knives at home need to be sharpened a little bit, there's a lot of great people that do that at farmers markets or local shops. Sometimes they even have mobile vans and they'll come to your neighborhood, and if you get all your neighbors together and do all your knives at once, it saves some money. So I've got lots of good chopped parsley here. We only need 1 tablespoon. So I'm going to measure that out of what I have here. You want to make sure it's pretty finely chopped so that you don't have really big chunks of parsley in your mixture. Not only is that not fun, you get it stuck in your teeth, but it doesn't spread the flavor out very well. We want to make sure the flavor of the parsley gets spread out all the way through our mixture. Set that extra parsley aside. I'll probably use that to garnish because that's lovely. It's always nice to garnish our food. I'm going to chop my thyme up just a little tiny bit. Thyme is already so small. Those leaves are so tiny. Doesn't need to be chopped much, but again, to help spread out the flavor, I want to kind of disperse it a little bit better by chopping it up. So that was 1 teaspoon of thyme and 1 tablespoon of chopped parsley. And now my garlic powder. There's, I don't know how many, lots of different kinds of garlic powder on the market. I use Chinese garlic powder. I just kind of like the flavor. It doesn't matter. Whatever you can find, whatever fits in your budget, whatever is at the store, as long as it's a nice fine grain powder and doesn't have any added salt. So ½ a teaspoon of garlic powder, just a half guy. You want to kind of shake it up. If I have that much on there, that's way more than ½ a teaspoon, right? So you want to shake it off and make sure you're getting 1 even measurement. ½ teaspoon garlic, and the same ½ a teaspoon of onion powder. Again, make sure that it's powder, not salt. There's things called onion powder and things called granulated onion. They're not exactly the same, but one or the other would work in this recipe just fine. Nice even level ½ teaspoon of onion. Okay, both of those are going to give us lots of really, really good flavor. ½ teaspoon kosher salt. Kosher salt is a coarse salt, and it cooks really nicely. It adheres to your food, it spreads out the flavor really well, and that coarse grain, you don't have to have as much of it. It kind of, plus it's a good sea salt. It's good for us in terms of salt. I like the flavor. You can use regular sea salt. You can use table salt. It would be fun. Pinch of pepper. The black pepper is kind of here or there for me. I like how it enhances some things, but just a little bit for me. If you like a lot, go for it. It's very personal with pepper. That's our mixture. So with my hands, I am going to just make sure that this gets really, really mixed. I'm going to pour in half my egg. Now that I've got some of those breadcrumbs in there. So I'm just eyeballing it and pouring it until about half is left. You don't need a ton of it later to egg wash, but we also don't want to put too much egg in this or it'll be a very wet mixture and it will leak out of our puff pastry. So that egg and the breadcrumbs are gonna soak up the egg. They're gonna expand and help to create a well-bound mixture of sausage or whatever meat you might be using. And as long as you can feel or tell that it's really well combined, there's no big chunks of herbs in one section, and I can see that this is all really well spread out nice. So that's my mixture, that's it. Now you wash your hands very carefully. Any kind of raw meat can be risky. You don't want to get that cross-contamination with anything else in your kitchen or any of the other food that we're making. Because if it, for some reason, touched something that wasn't going to cook fully, then there would still be some raw meat, touching things, and we don't want that anywhere if we can avoid it. So I'm going to move this whole board really quickly and put a new board down just so I can show you the pastry process. Okay. Get a little squared away. Not many ingredients in this recipe, which is also really nice. Not too much cleanup. So we're going to have to use a little bit of flour on our board, or if you're just working on the counter, that's fine. I don't recommend doing that if your counter is like mine and it has a lot of grooves in it between tiles, just because your pastry will want to stick to that, and it doesn't create a very even level. So something that's nice and even, I'm just going to put a little bit of flour down so that my puff pastry doesn't stick to my board. Because now what we want to do is start rolling out some of our puff pastry. You guys should have, the recipe says just to thaw 1 sheet out of your 2 sheets that come in those traditional boxes. If you wanted to double up this recipe, you absolutely could do the whole pound of ground meat and have extra sausage rolls, or you could just cut them bigger and make like full-size sausage rolls, which is a thing. We are making mini sausage rolls, which is more of an appetizer size, just because I think that it's sort of nice portion control, but also really a nice snack for the kids, and it's fun to make things little and cute. So I don't have the larger sheet like you do. I have these squares, but they are very similar once I kind of put them together in size. So all I'm going to show you, yours would be big, so you're going to cut yours into thirds, like a book, like a third. I'm only going to be able to cut mine into 2, just because mine is narrower than your rectangle. Even if I just did mine in the squares, it would work. Like it doesn't hurt whatever kind of shape your puff pastry is in. So as long as your surface is nicely floured and your puff pastry isn't sticking to it too much, you want to start rolling it from the center to the edges. We're not too concerned about making it wider. What we want to do is make it a little bit longer and thinner. So I'm going to start in the middle of the puff pastry, right in the middle of the square. Yours would be a rectangle, so you would be going the long way. Start in the middle and gently apply pressure as you roll outward towards the edge. From the center out towards the edge, whether that's towards you or away from you. You always want to start in the center and then roll it gently away. I am barely putting any pressure. The amount of like gentle weight from gravity is basically all I'm pressing on this. I don't want to especially roll really hard over the edge and flatten out that edge and make a super skinny corner where one side is way skinnier than the other, or you're making holes in the puff or anything like that. So that's all I'm going to do. I don't need this to be very, I mean, this is as thin as we want it to go. I'm starting to kind of be able to see the light through it in certain places. It's less than 1 millimeter thick, so it's really thin. It's about as thin as pasta can roll out to be very thin puff, but without making it too weak or stretched out. You can still pick it up and it still stays in one good sheet, okay? So that's my first rectangle. I'm just gonna do 2 so that we can get this in the oven. But again, you start from the middle and you gently press down while you roll out towards the edges. If you wanted to make it wider, you can do the exact same thing. It's just we're going more for a long tube of sausage roll than we are a wide one, for a couple reasons. The skinnier and more condensed the filling is, the faster it will cook, like the more it will cook through. And we definitely don't want to have any raw, undercooked ground meat. Also, making them small means that they're a little easier to eat. You just pop them in your mouth. A little bite-sized food is really fun. The safe cooking temperature for any ground meat, nerd alert, is 155 degrees internal temperature. You can make a note of that anywhere, or if you want to remember, that's awesome. Ground meats of any kind need to be cooked safely to 155 degrees. If you have a meat thermometer, that's the easiest way to tell. With any kind of ground meat, the other and most important way to tell is by cutting into it and seeing if there's any pink or raw meat in the center. It will definitely be a different color than the cooked meat, so you'll be able to tell. But getting a thermometer is a good addition to a kitchen, just as a side note. Okay, so I've got my 2 rectangles here, and now I'm going to fill them with my sausage filling, which is pretty simple. We want to put it right down the middle. I'm gonna divide my mix into two because I have two rectangles here. I'm going to kind of pack it together, making it a little bit tight. We don't want a lot of air in between the meat. We kind of want this to be a nice, like a meatball, which we're then going to squeeze out into a snake. You want to have a long, like tube of the ground meat mixture, leaving about an inch on both sides so that we have space to roll up the puff pastry. Again, this is preference. If you want to make real big sausage rolls, you can just put all your meat in one sheet and roll it up, and then you have to cook it for a long time to make sure it's safe, which is fine. Or you can make even teenier, skinnier ones, and then cut them into little, like, battery size, little, like, pigs in a blanket size sausages if you want. That would be fine too. That would cook even faster than these will. These should only take about 15-20 minutes. My oven is at 425 already. All right, so that's that. Wash hands again. There's always a debate on what's better, to wear gloves or wash your hands. I know a lot of people out there in the world, they see videos of people making food and they're not wearing gloves, and that seems a little scary, but washing your hands is actually the cleanest way of working in a kitchen. A lot of the times people wear gloves and then they don't change them often enough. So there's some debate. I tend to just wash my hands a lot, especially these days. Makes it easier. So I've got my two rectangles of sausage puff pastry ready to roll. This is the fun part. What we're going to do is put a little teeny tiny bit of water. I'm not sure if it says this. I don't think that I've made sure this was in the recipe. This is kind of important. You can do it without doing this, but if you're making notes to do this at another day, write this part down. Putting a little teeny bit of water on the edge of the puff pastry where you're going to seal them together, just on the very bottom edge, on the top edge here. Just dab on a little bit of water. That's going to help it stick a lot, and anything that's going to help us stick it is going to be really, really helpful. So I am rolling from the bottom, which is closest to me, up and over, where it's then going to seal with this side where we just had that water. And you kind of want to roll it around a little bit. Make sure that that seam gets really nice and closed up. If you need to, I'm going to kind of pinch it together. Just create an extra tight seal. Roll that up a little bit so that I get kind of a flattened seam there. And that's one too, ready to go. We're going to bake it seam side down. That's going to really help it stick. But putting that tiny touch of water on the seam edges is important. And I'm sorry that's not on the recipe. I will edit it before I upload it to the catalog. Which, if you didn't know, any of our past recipes and class videos get uploaded to our website. We have a catalog of recipes that anybody can access. And then the videos, as soon as they're edited, which takes a while, then they get uploaded to our website as well. So if you wanted to watch any of last quarter's episodes or workshops, they are all there. And any recipes from any workshops that you weren't able to take part in, they should be in the catalog. And if there aren't any, or if you're looking for one in particular and you don't see it, then you can always email me or contact me on Instagram. If you are not following us on Instagram, we are at UCLA Teaching Kitchen. I highly recommend it, mostly because that's where I post the final pictures of the things that we make together. But also, that's where I announce upcoming classes, what we might be making this week, and any extra workshops we're doing. So follow me there. Plus, if you send a message to our Instagram account, it goes to me, because I am the Teaching Kitchen right now. So we've got our rolls, we've got our sheet pan ready. Oven is on. All we need to do, we're going to egg wash and get these into the oven just in time, because they only take, like I said, 15 to 20 minutes. I'm adding about a tablespoon of water to this egg. This egg wash, if you put on just egg, it would become extremely golden brown and it would cook almost like an egg, which you get, like there are buns that you can buy in bakeries that have that very golden, almost eggy consistency on top. That's just because they use plain egg as their egg wash, which is fine. If you add a little bit of water to your egg wash, then it doesn't cook like a scrambled egg on top of your food. It just creates a glaze that creates a really nice golden brown color on our final product. So I'm using a pastry brush. It's a silicone pastry brush. You can use any kind of brush. Sometimes I usually just use old paint brushes as my brushes. Just make sure they're kind you can clean really well. That's the issue. I'm brushing on the sides and the top. Want to make sure it kind of drips down all the way to the bottom where the sausage roll meets the cutting board. So you're getting it really, really well coated, top and sides. We don't worry about the bottom, just because it's going to get extra golden from the surface contact with the hot pan. Plus, if we put egg on the bottom, it would get a little too eggy, I think. So, egg wash sides and top. We're going to cut these into our small sausage roll sizes, which again, vary up to you, but I think I put in the recipe, cut them about 2 inches long. So that would be about that. And I'm using my regular chef's knife. I am going in, getting the tip of the knife down on the board and then quickly slamming it down, sort of like a guillotine. You could definitely use a serrated knife and kind of gently saw through the puff pastry if your chef's knife is not sharp enough to kind of get a clean cut. Some of mine are going to be a little different in length because, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of this roll. So I'm going to try to make the next ones a little bit more even in size in an odd number, which is fun. So 1, 2, 3, a little shorter than the rest, but that's okay. So am I. All right, my raw knife and raw whisk are going away. I want to make sure that those don't touch anything. Then I'm going to use a small knife. This is called a paring knife. Where's my paring knife? Sorry, y'all. Too many knives. Paring knives are small, short, sharp knives, which are really good for detail work. All we want to do is cut little slits in the top to let the steam escape while it cooks. You can do just like little pierces where you're just poking 2 little holes. And that's fine. I kind of like to make small little slits because then when it bakes, it looks professional. So you leave it on the cutting board, use the very tip of a sharp paring knife, and just kind of drag it across the top of the puff pastry to get 2 open little slits like that. Okay? You can do any. You can do a 1 line. You can do, like I said in this, just poke a hole in it. You can try to leave a secret code for your friends. When I worked at a bakery, I did these cornbread skillets every day, and I would top them with bacon, and it was supposed to look all haphazard, but there was always one where the bacon was in the shape of a J, just to see if anybody would notice. Usually they didn't. So you have fun when you're baking and you have fun when you're cooking. Write your name in the sausage rolls if that's what makes you happy. I am going to take these and put them 2 inches apart at least on my baking sheet. I'll show you that here in a second. And then we're going to put this into the middle rack of the oven, 425. Set your timer for about 10 minutes. It should take 15 to 20, but we're going to probably want to spin our tray halfway around. And I'll explain that. All right. Now we kind of hope for the best. So a couple of notes. You can, once you've got your egg wash brushed on and your slits cut into the top, A really nice and yummy fun addition is either sprinkling some poppy seeds or some sesame seeds. And then it kind of looks like a fancy deli roll. And that's really fun. That's a nice addition. Plus then you get a little bit of extra nutrition because seeds are really good for us in lots of different ways. Let's see, any other notes? If you were doing it with a different kind of meat, you want to bind it the same way, breadcrumbs, egg, all those yummy herbs and seasonings. And then if it seems dry, like it's not going to hold together like a meatball, then maybe a little bit more egg or a little bit more breadcrumbs. Also, if you're using a ground meat, like a 95% lean ground turkey, which has almost no fat in it at all, or a white meat ground chicken, then I would probably add like a splash, maybe a teaspoon or two of a healthy oil like an olive oil or a canola oil, just because that fat actually is really important to help get the meat to cook together and not just kind of crumble out in a minced meat kind of a package. You want it to bind, and so that little bit of extra fat with the egg and the breadcrumbs goes a long way. So if you're not using fat, if that's really important to have a very low fat meal, you probably wouldn't be making it with puff pastry, but there are, like I said, whole wheat puff pastries. There are other kind of dough. You could do this in a phyllo dough, which is a super, super thin Greek dough. It also comes frozen. You can roll it out and then roll things up. It's very, very flaky. It's a lot less dough than puff pastry, but it's not that much less butter. Phyllo dough has plenty of butter. So if you're concerned about that, then what I would do is use whole wheat bread, really good whole wheat bread, roll it out, let the kids roll it out really, really flat so you've got thin sheets of bread, and then roll up the sausage in that and cook it in the oven. The bread, you probably want to wrap it in foil so the bread doesn't burn while the sausage cooks all the way through, but if you did that with turkey, it would cook like that. And you could have kind of a whole wheat bread, little snacky version of the sausage roll. That would work. There's a lot of experimenting and fun things that you can try. If you like this, but you think I want to add something more, I want it to be more, I want more, don't we always want more? You can change the flavors kind of entirely up to you. You can do like a Cajun sausage roll and add in a bunch of Cajun spices and seasonings, which is really delicious and would take it in a different way. You could add in a lot of ginger and garlic and lemongrass and maybe leave out the thyme, and you would have a completely different sort of Asian themed sausage roll. It would be really delicious as a snack, maybe dipped into some hoisin or something. Get the basic fundamental traditional sausage roll down and then start to think about how you might play with it. And if you do come up with some fun ideas of like, ooh, that would be a fun twist on a sausage roll, then please message me, because I love to share those ideas and try to come up with a way that we can incorporate them, or I can encourage you or like explain maybe how it might work. I would love to help you come up with different recipes and ideas based on what we do in this class. I'm going to set my timer for 6-ish minutes now, just so I don't forget entirely. Usually I set a timer when I have other things happening, but I don't usually set a timer when I'm not distracted, just because I can kind of keep a sense of that in my head after doing this for 16 years. But timers are very important when you're baking and when you have things distracting you, like everyone does in their houses and their families and their lives. So timers are helpful. Don't feel embarrassed about using timers. They're great. Some bakers are super snobby about that, which is weird. They're just like, I don't need a timer. Okay. They usually burn stuff, so it's okay. Let's see. While we're waiting to check those, next week, what do I have on our agenda? I will definitely be sending out all of the recipes again in advance, either tomorrow or Friday. But I'm trying to get a little ahead for this summer to kind of see what we might be looking at. I think I decided on chicken enchiladas next week. Hold on. Yes. Yes. Chicken enchiladas, which is one of my favorites. Also doesn't have to have the oven for a really super long amount of time, and it gets really fun to make with your hands on. And you can do it with a couple different sauces, but we're going to be going with the traditional red sauce and cheese. seems to be a favorite among a lot of families, including mine. And so thinking about that, I will send out the recipe in advance. So if you have any substitution requests, or you know that like something won't work for you and your family, then let me know and we'll figure out how you can still make it or still participate. If you haven't also signed up for our other workshops, they are not just for adults, and this is not just for kids. I like to make easy, fun recipes too. So for anybody, our other classes, meal prep on Mondays and baking on Tuesdays. So the meal prep class, I send out a shopping list and recipes, and then we get together and prep out a lot of different partial prep that you can put together through the week for lots of different lunches and dinners with basically 5 minutes of work because you've got everything prepped out. So we had a really fun class this last Monday making a bunch of different Asian foods and teaching people how you can mix and match throughout the week, but have most of your work done for you, which is really nice. Our baking class is exactly what it is. It is just for fun, just baking, just learning some basic fundamental methods and some really delicious recipes. We made chocolate chip and lemon sugar cookies this week, and next week we're making salted caramel brownies. So sign up for that if you haven't already. Just like this class, all of the classes, we upload the recipes and we upload the videos. So even if you can't make it live, then check the website, you know, in the next week or two, and hopefully the classes will have been turned over and uploaded by then. Let's see, what else about this? So serving these sausage rolls, traditionally it's with a mustard, as far as I know. In New Zealand, they don't even really have ketchup as we know it. Some parts do, and the McDonald's does, obviously. But there's something they call tea sauce in New Zealand's tomato sauce, but it doesn't taste like what we would think of as tomato sauce. It's not meant for pasta. It's sort of like ketchup, but it's got a lot of spices that we don't put in our ketchup, like cloves and other flavors. And the Kiwis love it. They love the tea sauce in New Zealand. But they still eat their sausage rolls mostly with mustard, I think, or without sauce. I didn't notice anyone getting like ketchup on the side with their sausage rolls. And to me, that's crazy because it's a wonderful dip for the sausage roll. Not just because I'm sort of a child, but I really like ketchup for this. And then a good deli spicy mustard. Yellow mustard works really well too if that is more favorable to your palate or your kids. Sometimes spicier mustards are not great. But those good brown deli mustards are really wonderful with these sausage rolls. They're great with a dip and they're great on their own. Like I said, if you made a lot of them this time, you can let them cool to room temperature, put them in a Ziploc bag or a good airtight storage container and freeze them. And then pull them out of your freezer, pop them in the toaster oven. I would say the microwave, but then your puff pastry is not going to be very crispy or like puffy and flaky. So better to reheat in the oven or the microwave. I mean, toaster oven. But yeah, that would only take about 5 minutes to get them kind of warmed up again. Also, sausage rolls are perfectly delicious and edible at room temperature. Lots of people just eat it as a breakfast or a snack. So, oh, we are already getting some good puffing and golden stuff happening. I'm going to show you this here in the camera, why I'm going to spin things. I don't know if you can see the slight variations in color, but I'm already getting golden brown flakiness happening up here and none back here. So my oven is very uneven. I have to spin this around to make sure that all of my sausage rolls get a lovely golden brown and I get a good consistent heat all the way around so that all of the sausage cooks through and everything is nice and finished. I don't know if you watch the Great British Baking Show. If you don't, 10 out of 10, highly recommend. You definitely should watch it. Well, there's no shoulds, but I love it. It's a great show. And they're kind and supportive of each other. And you don't want a soggy bottom on your sausage rolls. You know that term. It's when pastry dough doesn't get crisp on the very, very bottom, usually because it's underbaked or the filling is too wet. And so your pastry just never has a chance. Sausage and other meats can be quite wet. They have a good amount of fat. They have some liquid waters in them. We put egg in that mixture. So to make sure that we get a really nice, crisp, flaky puff pastry bottom and not a soggy bottom, you want to make sure, that's why we've got it at a good high heat. And you want to make sure that you get a good, consistent cook. So spinning it around is really important. Most ovens are not even. Usually the front is a little hotter because the heat is trying to escape. The air, anywhere you are, air is trying to get out through cracks or vents or holes or whatever. It's just trying to move. And the air in the oven is no different. It's trying to move out. And the only way that it has to escape is usually through the door. So it's trying to get through those gaskets and those seals. And so it's usually hotter closer to the door in your oven. And the back part of the oven, depending on your oven and your house, is usually a little bit cooler. So spinning things around goes a long way to making sure they get perfectly done. Also, it's just kind of nice to look at your food partway through, because how else are you going to know if everything's working? You're in charge of the situation, and you need to sort of make sure that nothing's on fire, or like you made sure to turn the oven on. You know, all those things are really important. Okay, so I'm going to turn this back to just about 8 more minutes. So in total, I think that these will have been in for about the 18 minutes tops. I cut mine pretty small, and I can tell that the puff pastry is already getting nice and golden on some parts, so it's not going to take forever to finish. The bigger your sausage roll, which you can get or make full-size sausage rolls, they're about that big. That would take a lot longer to cook through. You want to make sure that the ground meat is safe to eat, and so the more you have packed in there, the longer it takes to cook. And that's the rule with almost everything. The smaller you cut it, the smaller it is, the faster it's going to cook in your oven, whether you're roasting vegetables, pieces of chicken, sausage rolls, cookies. You're making little baby cookies, they're going to cook much faster than you're making big jumbo-sized cookies. So all those things are important to kind of keep in mind as you're learning to cook more and getting used to recipes and differences and all these kinds of fun things that come with cooking. If there are any questions specifically about this or about any other classes or about any of the Teaching Kitchen workshops or about me, I suppose, now's the chance. Go ahead and type it into the box. Otherwise, I'm really looking forward to next week already. I love chicken enchiladas. We're going to be doing some fun things this summer. I also thought we would make some handmade meatballs with a homemade marinara sauce. We're going to make some frozen yogurt ice cream bars one day, and then I thought some diner style turkey burger patty melts maybe, and some pot stickers. I really want us to do that. We're going to definitely do a day where we make some vegetable pot stickers with a homemade dipping sauce. So a lot of really fun techniques that we're going to learn, a lot of really healthy and maybe not so healthy recipes we're going to learn, but the important thing is that we learn how we can make everything as good for us as we can. If you use whole wheat puff pastry on this, it's going to go a lot better for your heart. But a little bit of butter is not going to kill you. You just can't eat them every single day. Using ground turkey or chicken would be a huge step in a direction of lower saturated fats. But again, if you have one little sausage roll a week, you're going to be all right. As long as we stay active and you keep things in moderation, and you're paying attention to all the other healthy foods that you're putting into your body, then I'm sort of the mindset that life is short, and a little sausage roll every once in a blue moon is okay. So I'm getting down to the last 5 minutes. Ooh, I'm excited. I don't want to keep letting too much of that heat out of the oven though, because it's important to keep the puff pastry rising and crisping. The more you let the air out of the oven, then they'll kind of stagnate that process. It needs to heat back up a little bit each time you open the oven. So it's okay to check, but don't be impatient like me. Let's see. I try to do things for these kinds of recipes that have the least amount of cleanup possible. That's really helpful for everybody in the family. If we get into anything through this quarter where there's any specialty equipment or odd things, don't hesitate to ask. I usually try to make sure that these are accessible to everybody, no matter what kind of a kitchen you have or kind of equipment you're working with, especially when we've got kids helping us and working with these recipes or hopefully making them themselves. Then I want to make things as straightforward and safe and simple as possible. So if there's anything ever that pops out as like, oh, this would be great, except I don't have this or that or the other, just reach out to me. Don't hesitate, and we'll figure it out so that we can all keep having fun. Let's see. Went over next week. There's no questions. I've got a bag full of chocolate chip cookies over there from class. It's torturing me, but that's the fun of getting to cook every single day. Okay, you guys. These probably need maybe 2 or 3 more minutes, but I want you to see how close we're getting. Got really good honey color brown happening on all of them now. I'm going to put this down and show you here. This is a disclaimer, I'll say this every class. My fingers are extremely desensitized. I've been doing this for 16 years. I can touch things that are very hot compared to you. So please don't think just because Chef Julia can grab her sausage rolls right out of the oven. Don't try that. Please don't try that. Tongs or a little spatula or something like that, or even a spoon would be much safer. We just want to look at the bottom of the sausage roll and make sure. You can see here, very nice kind of hay colored honey golden brown. That is a sign that they are pretty much done. Almost done. You don't want it to get very much browner than that on the bottom. I just want to give mine another little spin. There's one little corner that's kind of not getting as brown as the others. And I want to make sure that all of my sausage rolls are picture perfect and delicious. What's important to notice though is the way that we bound that meat together and made sure that it was really tightly packed inside the puff pastry. That's why it's not all spilling out and crumbling out the edges of each sausage roll. If it were a very, very dry mixture of ground meats, then it's just going to cook up and crumble. There's nothing holding it together. So like I said, if you don't have a high enough fat content in your meat, then an extra egg, a little extra breadcrumb, and it's going to help kind of seal it together so that you don't have just tubes of puff pastry with all the meat kind of spilling out the side. You want it to be really nice and well bound like a meatball would be, and so that's why I've got nice tight little sausage rolls and not meat crumbling out the edges of each one. So that is sort of one of the important things. It's a really, really simple, straightforward recipe. Making sure that you roll it correctly, tightly, and seam it really, really well, like seal that seam really well, then you can't really mess it up after that. It's gonna be great. You could forget the egg wash entirely and it would be okay. If you forgot to put those slits in, they're not gonna explode, but you're gonna have maybe a little bit more bulging or, from where the steam is trying to explode. You'll probably be okay. They'll still taste delicious no matter what. So none of these things are going to be huge enough mistakes that this isn't still going to be fun and tasty. The only thing is making sure that it is cooked all the way through. That's the only thing that absolutely would ruin this situation is if you ate raw ground meat. Oh, it smells so good in here. I wish you could smell this. If you're making it, I hope it smells as good in your kitchen as it does in mine. It's a treat. So, timer off, oven off. Now we get to let that cool down. The house is going to be nice and cool later. Hopefully this is a great dish for dinner. You can absolutely make it, let it set. It'll be delicious as a room temp dish. Serve it with some salad or something on the side, little veggies, or heat it back up in the oven later when it's dinner time, just for maybe 5 or 10 minutes until it's hot all the way through if you wanted a hot meal. But like I said, it's really tasty and just as fine if you eat it room temp. So let it cool down to room temp, loosely cover it, and then have it for dinner. Or if you're going to store them, absolutely let them come down to room temperature first. Don't ever put something hot away into your refrigerator. If you close something up that's hot, if I were to put these in a Ziploc bag and seal it and put it in my fridge, what I have just created is an incubation zone for bacterial growth. When things are coming from a healthy temperature through the unhealthy temperatures down to the healthy temperature. So cooked at 105, 155 degrees is healthy and safe. You can eat it anywhere from that point down to like 70 degrees-ish. But like while it's cooling down from hot to cold, it's called the danger zone, and it's where bacteria is more likely to grow. So you want to cool food very safely. You want to make sure that you're not rushing the cooling process by putting it into your refrigerator, because that's it's just not the right way to make sure food is safe and healthy to eat. So when you're cooking something in advance and you want to save it for later, just leave it out, let it cool down to room temp, whatever room temp is, at a safe, slow, natural speed, and then put it in the fridge where it will come down to the cooled temperature of 40 or below. If you live in a very hot apartment, maybe, or house or neighborhood, like I do, there are some days where it is so hot in the room around the food that it takes too long for this food to cool down to room temperature. And in that time, if it's out on the counter for too long, then bacteria can start to grow. I don't want you to worry about like, this is gonna sit out on my counter for the next 30 minutes. Perfectly safe, not gonna hurt me, not gonna hurt anybody. But then it will be room temp and I will put it away. If it were to go sit on the counter for the next 3 hours, not a safe way to treat food that can create an environment for bacterial growth. And anything that has, especially protein or dairy or things like that. I mean, even cooked veggies, you want to make sure that you cool it down properly before you put it away. And that just means let it come to room temp and then wrap it up and put it in the fridge. Yeah, if you needed to cool it down super fast, like oh my God, I have to run out of the house in 20 minutes, but these aren't going to be cool enough, then you can put the whole thing uncovered. Do not seal it or wrap it or close it up. But you can put the whole thing in the fridge, just like the whole tray. It will bring the temperature of your fridge up ever so slightly, but that's okay. It does the work to bring itself back down really quickly. And that will at least help to speed up the cooling process of what it is you're cooling, but it has to be completely open. You can't have it sealed up and tight in a container. Just that's really unsafe. So if you wanted to kind of flash cool it by putting it in the fridge, you would just put the whole tray in there and try to like speed the cooling process down for a few minutes. But safest, best to leave it out on the counter, bring it to room temperature, and then safely wrap it up and put it away. If you have a big enough family, then these will probably be all eaten in one go, and so you don't need to worry about all of that. But if you were freezing some, room temp, then pack it up, then put it in the freezer, okay, just for safety's sake, especially with ground meats. Just better safe than sorry, always, all the way. So these are perfectly golden all the way around on top. On the bottom, I'm going to show you one of them. I'm going to pick my biggest one, because if my biggest one is cooked all the way through, then all of the smaller ones are likely cooked all the way through. So I'm going to just poke in. The best way to tell, you can use a thermometer, like I said, but just give it a little cut right into the thickest part, right in the middle, and open her up. I don't know if you can tell, there's no variation in color. It's all cooked one way all the way through. There's no raw pink, which would be very apparent in ground pork, and also chicken, turkey, and beef. If it's not cooked through, you'll be able to tell by color. If there's any kind of question, if you're hesitant a lot, you want to make sure that it springs back to the touch. It's firm. It doesn't feel gelatinous or like squishy like raw meat does. And there's no juices, or what we call juices, no bloods or waters from the inside of the meat flowing out onto your board. Those are the safest ways to tell that you're going to eat safely cooked sausage. Okay? So that one is going to be my sample. You definitely need to try things and make sure that you like the way it tastes. If it's maybe not seasoned perfectly to your liking, if you like things with extra pepper, then you can mix in some extra pepper into your dipping sauce. If you like things super spicy, but the rest of your family doesn't, then you can add a whole bunch of hot sauce into your ketchup and go to town. You can really kind of make it your own snack, make it fun, and it's really, really a delicious, wonderful thing at birthday parties and other parties. Whether you're a kid or a grown-up, it's a really great appetizer. People love it. It's hearty, it's filling, it's comforting, but as you can see, it takes about 45 minutes to get them all done. So that's it. Now, you can just leave it, but we like to present our food in the teaching kitchen, because even if you're just cooking for yourself, which I never want to hear you say that, because cooking for yourself is the best thing you can do. And you are special, just like everyone else. So presenting your food in a really nice way and making yourself feel good, like, look at what I did, look at how pretty that is. It makes you more excited to eat it. It makes it more fun. Plus, and you can take pictures of it and have a good time. Let's see, little dipping cup. I like mine with mustard, like I said. Let's see, little whole grain Dijon. And that chopped parsley that we saved, no point in wasting all of that. Little of that, little of that. And voila.